great to be here with all of you and also with an awful lot of friends. There's one friend in particular I wanted to mention at the beginning. We've known each other for many years in the course of this conservative movement. His voice and his values are respected by people all across this country. And I can tell you, our administration is grateful for his friendship, for his support, and for his leadership in the conservative movement. Would you join me in thanking the founder of the Resurgent and one of the most prominent conservatives in America, Eric Erickson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vice President. That was totally unexpected. I was waiting for the Apollo 11 countdown. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here at Atlanta's Evening News. That was Vice President Mike Pence at this weekend's Resurgent Gathering. Y'all, it really takes a lot to make me mad. It really takes a lot to make me mad. And I tried to be rather laid back and even keeled, but man, when it comes to the coverage of the shootings this weekend, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I think, has hit a real low, particularly because they tried to drag me and my conference into it, and it really makes me mad. And I really expect that the AJC will apologize. You know, several years ago, I offhandedly referred to them, as Neil Bortz used to, as the urinal constipation. And we're all owned by the same parent company, and they were livid that I said it on air, got very upset and complained. And I've never called them that again. And today in the AJC, it reads like Jim Galloway wrote it. I assume Jim Galloway did, and I got a good relationship with Jim Galloway, which makes me even more mad about it because he knows how to get in touch with me to ask the question. I had Karen Handel on stage with me at the Resurgent Gathering on Saturday, taking on Lucy McBath. And Galloway suggests in his column, I did not ask Karen Handel about the shooting in El Paso, Texas, for political reasons, or any of the other people on stage at the Resurgent Gathering for political reasons. In fact, I had a series of tweets sometime late in the weekend, I think on Sunday. It might have been late Saturday night. It might have been Sunday. I don't know. It all blurs together. That Republicans really don't need to engage on this issue because the media already has a narrative to blame Republicans, claim that they're propping up white supremacists, avoiding the issue, and in the tank for guns. And I think Jim Galloway, in his Political Insider column, proves my point by the way he handled this, by throwing that tweet up and saying, oh, I guess this isn't why he asked any of the people. The shooting happened at 11:30 Central Time, 12:30 Eastern Time. Karen Handel wasn't on stage until 1:30. It's the dog that didn't bark. Da, 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 playing Sherlock Holmes. It makes me livid that he would suggest that without even bothering to ask. There is a really easy answer for why I did not ask any of the candidates about the shooting in El Paso, Texas. And you can go to theresurgent.com and pull up my piece where I have the screenshots from my cell phone. The first breaking news alert out of El Paso did not hit the wires until 3:47 p.m. on the New York Times on my phone. The second breaking news alert came from the Wall Street Journal. It was at 3:57 p.m. I've got the screenshots. You can go to theresurgent.com and see for yourself. So let's see. I didn't ask Karen Handel about the El Paso shooting because she was on stage from 1:30 to 2 p.m. and I didn't even get a breaking news alert until 3:47 p.m. well after she was gone, Jim. That's why I didn't ask her. Maybe you should have direct messaged me and asked me why I didn't ask. In fact, I remember distinctly seeing, because I had my watch on, because people were tapping me when time was up. I've got I've got an Apple Watch, and to try to keep the trains running on time at the conference, there was a clock in the back, but also I had staff who within the conference room were able to send me a note that would get to my phone, even with the limited cell service, and it would tap me and say, okay, I know I've got a couple minutes left here. And I got a tap and thought, oh, time must be up. Bill Lee, the governor of Tennessee, was on stage. There were 3 minutes on the clock in the back of the room, and he was talking about how his wife died when he was 40 years old and left him with 4 children. His daughter then attempted to commit suicide and was very nearly successful, and he left his business in the hands of friends to take care of his family, and they nearly put it in bankruptcy. And suddenly I get this alert. There are 3 minutes left on the clock saying, oh, there's been a shooting somewhere. I knew nothing about it other than there's been a shooting somewhere. And I wasn't going to say, okay, hey, Governor, in the 3 minutes left, now that you've told us your wife was dying, your wife was dead, your daughter nearly committed suicide, and your business was going bankrupt, let's talk about gun violence in America. And then the next guest was Carrie Cervino from the Judicial Crisis Network, not a relevant topic for her. This is actually, the AJC plays perfectly into where I wanted to go with this today, because there really is no reason for any Republican to talk to any reporter about gun violence in this country, because their narrative is already set and every single story has to be fit into the box. And here comes Galloway with his Political Insider column and proves the point, suggesting I avoided asking Republican candidates about this mass shooting for political reasons, when the reality is none of us in that room knew that it had happened. The first alert was at like 3:47, 3:57, somewhere in there, depending on which one you got. And it was just a cursory alert that something had happened. I didn't even know the details until I went to dinner that night. I'm sorry I had to do a conference with the Vice President of the United States, 2 governors, 3 senators, 4 congressmen, multiple executives from Fortune 500 companies on stage with me, and didn't have enough time to entertain the talking points the AJC might have wanted me to ask. Maybe they could ask the questions themselves instead of getting mad at me for not knowing the topic to ask the question. Just a really garbage thing for the AJC to do. We're all on the same team. I guess they'll call and complain that I said something not nice about them. That's fine. It's really, really aggravating that they wouldn't bother to even reach out and ask me why I didn't ask the question, as opposed to just running it and suggesting that it was politics. I thought they reported facts. Apparently not today. Wow. Okay. I have other relevant points to make on this, but that really makes me mad. One of the things that frustrates me about what the AJC did to me and the conference and to my guests on stage is that they could reach out. And I try to defend the AJC even to you and promote the good work they do. And listen, if I've done something wrong, I'm perfectly happy to be called out, but I did nothing wrong. I knew nothing about the topic. And instead of calling and reaching out and saying, this seems like something you would ask, why didn't you? And finding out I knew nothing about it on stage, they just ran with it and went with speculation. And that's part of the problem we have with the way the media covers these shooting instances. CNN is running multiple stories attacking the president and Republicans for their handling of this stuff. They're getting some basic facts wrong along the way. You've got Chris Cuomo out there attacking Republicans for not coming on CNN. Why should they come on CNN? The entire media, and clearly the AJC is part of this, they have this narrative bubble they want to write. Did you know there were 2 shootings this weekend? One in Dayton, Ohio, one in El Paso, Texas. The guy who was the shooter in Dayton, Ohio is a socialist who likes Elizabeth Warren. The guy in Texas sounds like he's a Trump supporter from his white nationalist rhetoric about an invasion of people from Mexico. It sounds to some degree, as the media is helpfully pointing out, like things the president has said. But he goes on and talks about in his manifesto, I don't encourage you to read it, but he goes on in his manifesto about how there's an ecological, environmental disaster and all this stuff. It's very clearly someone who's trying to form a narrative view and political ideology that's neither right nor left, but a blending of the two. And my frustration with the media here and the way they cover these things and why no Republican should engage in this stuff is the media is so invested in blaming Donald Trump for everything these days that every story has to be political. You know, we have a real problem in this country. There is a rise of white nationalist sentiment in this country. It is something that people need to address because it is a festering problem. And we have now seen this on multiple occasions in synagogues and in Walmarts now in El Paso, Texas, of angry, mostly white young men who have been radicalized online just like jihadists are, who are anti-immigrant and frankly anti-American. And we should have a conversation about this, but we can't have a conversation about this. We can't have a conversation about this because the media is too busy playing gotcha with Donald Trump. And the media is willing to allow progressive activists to try to change the language and try to steer the conversation in ways that are unhelpful to actually advancing anything other than progressive power. I don't know a Republican in this country or a conservative in this country who isn't worried about this issue and isn't concerned for their own family's sake. But I know very, very few of them who think that it would be to anyone's advantage to impose gun control in this country when the bad guys are going to continue to get guns. But when you have these conversations in the media, as we're seeing, the very first thing a Republican is required to do is to denounce the President of the United States. And if they don't denounce the President of the United States, the media wants no part of them. The media does not want them to come on. The media does not want them to be a part of the conversation unless they're willing to agree with the media and the left on the talking points. It is a very one-sided conversation. We see this with the presuppositions of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, where they just presume because of tweets I made after the fact that I didn't ask candidates on stage about this because of the political implications of it. I didn't want to make them uncomfortable or some such, when the reality is I didn't even know the thing had happened, and none of us did. Why would any Republican want to engage the media on these issues? And unfortunately, because the media controls so much of the conversation in the nation, we really need to be having these conversations. But there are presuppositions in place on both sides, and we should at least be able to talk fairly and honestly about those on this show tonight. And I will do my best to present the left's presuppositions as fairly and honestly as I can, because I do understand their concerns. But also I want to talk about some of the rights and why the media is incapable of engaging fairly on these issues. And if you'll just stick around with me, there are some points that need to be made on the shooting, why it's happened, and why it's going to continue to happen, and why in particular we're not going to find a solution to this because of how both sides are talking to each other. Just want to do a quick timeout for thanking Quip for being a longtime sponsor of this program. A lot of you got kids like me headed back to school, and well, maybe they're hygiene. Honest to goodness, I'm not sure how often our kid bathed during the summer. Our oldest now is just about every day, but the 10-year-old, well, time to get them back into a good routine, and Quip is a great way to do it if they're having difficulties getting, their teeth brushed on a regular basis. Get them a Quip. They've got a kid-sized version now, but even the adult version, it's fantastic. Longtime user, love it. My wife uses it. My daughter uses it. I guess need to get the 10-year-old to start using it. It works. It's one of the first electric toothbrushes accepted by the American Dental Association. They're backed by over 25,000 dental professionals. They've got thousands of 5-star reviews, verified 5-star reviews, no less. It's just a great toothbrush. It works. It's so well designed. It's only $25 if you go to getquip.com/Eric right now. You get your first refill pack for free. So you get your first refill pack free at getquip.com/Eric. And what is that refill pack? Well, every 3 months, you get a new brush head, so your Quip stays up to date and fresh. Go to getquip.com/Eric right now and get this great deal. All right, Charlie, you can talk to me down the line. Is there any profanity in that audio? Because it is a hippie Democratic socialist who said it. I haven't listened to the clip yet. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, okay. Keep your trigger on the button. Keep your finger on the button, because this is from the Democratic Socialist Convention. While the HAC is making a big deal about questions I asked or didn't ask, this was happening down the street. Notice everybody was paying attention to me and my conference and not the hippies at the Democratic Socialists. But this is the leader of the Democratic Socialists of America having their conference downtown at the Westin.
We have quiet rooms that are available. There's a range of options of these, right? One thing to note there, please don't go into that space with anything that's like an aggressive scent, for instance, right? First and foremost, use the proper doors. Don't try and exit through these or any other sort of like fun shortcuts you see. You have to have your credentials at all times. There are right-wing infiltrators who are trying to get in here and generally try to be chill, right? Take a deep breath. Feel better before you say anything. Please don't tweet photos of your credentials. If you have friends here that you would like to be here and they don't have credentials, don't let them in. Don't.
It goes on for there. I can't play it anymore because the little hippie gets all upset. Y'all, These are the Democratic Socialists of America. They were downtown and no one paid attention to them. By the way, Antifa decided to show up to protest the Vice President of the United States at my event. 6 people showed up. 6 people showed up. That wasn't a protest. That was standing in line to get coffee at the Starbucks. It just, these people. Wow. Okay. The phone number here, 404-872-0750, 1-800-WSB-TALK. I want to talk about worldview in this because I think it's deeply relevant to the conversations about the shootings. And honestly, I came in today and I really thought about avoiding all of it and not even addressing it as news because what good does it do? People are in their corners. But it's very interesting. I want to play this quick clip from the president's address this morning, and I've got some other audio from him I want to play, but there's this.
May God bless the memory of those who perished in Toledo. And may God protect them.
The shooting was in Dayton, Ohio. It wasn't in Toledo. Whoever got this on the teleprompter, he read it off the teleprompter, probably needs to lose their job or be disciplined. But Joe Biden actually said that the shootings were in Houston and in Michigan. He got both wrong. Notice how the media is amping up the president. They're totally ignoring that Joe Biden got it all wrong. Relevant to worldview. I want to talk about it when we come back. It is Eric Erickson here at Atlanta's Evening News on 95.5 WSB. I'm trying to get down with the new name. I need to ask your patience with me, those of you on the phone. I want to talk about this shooting issue, and I want to try to reflect the perspectives. And one of the frustrations I have in the current political climate in the United States, and it precedes Donald Trump by about a decade, is that because so much of the media has a progressive worldview, the conservatives in the country have had to understand the arguments on the left in ways the left has not had to understand arguments on the right. And I know there are people on the left who disagree with this, but just look at the issue of abortion. I can better articulate for you the progressive stance on why abortion should be a legal right and a women's choice than a progressive can articulate my view on life, because I am more surrounded with them and their view than they are with mine, because progressives in this country tend to isolate themselves in progressive enclaves where conservatives tend to interact on a daily basis with people of all political walks of life. This transcends the gun issue and gets into the gun issue, and we see this with the media. We saw this with the AJC reporting. We see this with the New York Times. The president in his remarks today actually called for stronger background checks regimes and red flag laws as measures of gun control. The New York Times headline after his speech is that the president rejects all gun control efforts. Why? Because the media is not familiar with, by and large, red flag laws, because they are proposals proposed by conservatives as a way to address gun violence in this country, and the media rejects them because they come from conservatives and not progressives, so they don't think that they're actually gun control measures. You see, we're dealing with presuppositions. Presuppositions are the things you believe, your worldview, if you will, when you go into arguments. And on the left, as faith has been replaced by politics for religion, everything is looked at politically. When you listen to the conversations in the media today, if you turn on CNN, what you're going to hear are conversations about the politics of this. Will it hurt the Republicans? Will it help the Democrats? Well, what are the political implications for Republican members of Congress? On and on it goes. Everything is looked at by politics because the presupposition for the left, their faith worldview, is that everything is political. And so everything must be dealt with by politics. They are looking for political solutions to evil, because politics can resolve these things. And so the conversation in the media, which leans left, is a secular conversation about the political ramifications, implications, and policy choices that will be made by people and the impacts they will have, and why Republicans don't go on and why Republicans are to blame, because it's all politics. Politics has become their religion. On the right, The presupposition still tends to be a Judeo-Christian worldview where there is evil and there's nothing that can be done about it until people address the moral underpinnings of society that are crumbling. And the moral underpinnings of society that are crumbling are generating loners and people who are mentally unstable and isolationists, and they're gravitating away from the church, and the church is letting people down, and we got to deal with the moral issue before we can deal with the political issue. And so neither side can have a conversation with each other because the right wants to engage on the moral level, the collapse of family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The left wants to engage on the political level of gun control, and if we ban guns, we'll stop this. Other countries don't have this, ignoring that other countries are somewhat unique, or we're very unique because we have a Second Amendment and other countries don't. And so neither side will have a conversation with each other. As a result, both sides are ceding the ground to terrorists. Yes, I am implicating my own side in this. I am also implicating the left. Neither side wants to engage on the issue. I will tell you, before you tune out because you're yelling at the radio now, conservatives, I understand why conservatives don't want to engage. Look at the AJC article about me and my conference. Their presumption is that I did not ask a candidate a question about the shooting in El Paso because of my statements that there's no reason to ask Republicans about these issues, as opposed to I didn't know about it and would have asked about it. The presumption from the New York Times with the president's speech is that he's opposed to all gun control measures, despite in that very same speech he proposed two measures for gun control, background checks and red flag laws that most conservatives support. Now, I want to play you something else here. This is more from the president's speech.
In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. These sinister ideologies must be defeated. Hate has no place in America. Hatred warps the mind, ravages the heart, and devours the soul.
So the president condemns racism and white nationalism, all the things the media says they want him to do. And it's not enough for them. Because unless the president is willing to change his Twitter habits, he's just stirring people up. Now, I got to tell you, I have a lot of friends who agree on the sentiment that if the president is going to go out and say the things he says on Twitter, then he's not really serious when he says this stuff off a teleprompter. He's saying what someone wants him to say as opposed to saying what he actually believes, and that is a problem, and I think there is a legitimate point there. But can we not just for a moment say that the media comes out all the time and says the president needs to say X, Y, and Z? The president did exactly as the media wanted, and they're blowing him up for it. That's pretty striking to me. That they're doing the president did exactly as the media wanted the president to do, and they're not willing to give the president credit for it. I want to play this clip. The Trump War Room has put this out of Cory Booker. Listen to this for just a moment.
And for him to fail even to condemn Nazis or even to talk about white supremacy as a problem in this country, to me, that is being complicit in the violence that is happening.
That was Cory Booker in March of this year.
Senator, another thing that the president said in his remarks today, I'll read it to you. He said, in one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. Do you welcome that acknowledgement?
No. And for him.
No. So in March, he says you got to do this, and now he says it's not enough. See, the left is always moving the ball. This is, by the way, for progressives who are listening to me right now, and you're wondering, why won't people on the right recognize we have a problem with gun violence and we need to compromise? The reason is because it will never be enough. At least conservatives are convinced of that. I mean, this president banned bump stocks, is willing to go for enhanced background checks, is willing to impose red flag laws on the country, and the left is attacking him for not supporting gun control. Because what the right understands, or at least believes due to years of left-wing rhetoric, is that the only solution in the left's mind is confiscating guns and banning them. And if you're not willing to ban guns and confiscate guns, then you're not actually in favor of doing anything about the problem. And that's unfortunate because the right's never going to go down that road. And so the right processes this as, okay, if I make all of these compromises, I'm still going to get attacked for not doing enough. So why bother even doing these things when it's never going to be enough for the left? If you could guarantee that the right could do universal background checks and red flag laws and ban bump stocks and say, okay, we've implemented the gun control, and no, we would never have more gun control, you would see the right rushing to do these things. But we know that the moment we do these things, the left will say, that's not enough. You got to do more. You got to do more. You're still supporting the people shooting people. You're still supporting the bad guys. So why bother lifting a finger? It's the same thing with engaging the media on these issues. Why bother engaging the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, when all they're going to do is paint you as someone opposed to doing anything and supporting the people gunning down others and supporting white nationalism, if you dare use the phrase illegal alien? Why bother engaging with reporters who themselves have such a biased worldview towards the left that they can't do anything other than report this as a political situation, and the bad guys are always the conservatives? There's no reason to engage them. They've proven their point today in their coverage from the AJC to the New York Times. The phone number here is 404-872-0750, 1-800-WSB Talk. How about this? We got a lot of people on hold. I got an announcement I need to make. So next hour, we will spend time on your phone calls out of the gate. I'll scratch the monologue and we will work through this conference. A lot of people want to share their thoughts on gun violence and gun control, so I'll get to that. But I have some news that I need to share with you because I've gotten some very concerned people who heard. So I'm launching another radio show a week from today. I am going nowhere here. I will be doing 4 to 6 p.m. in Atlanta, hopefully, well, for a very long time. I love you guys. I'm not going anywhere. But I have thought for a very long time, and the 2018 election really, really got me thinking that there is no real presence in the media covering even national politics from a Georgia perspective, let alone Georgia politics. And I was really disappointed with the death of local media around the state over the past few years. Stacey Abrams had a lot of national media in her corner, and it was very hard for Republicans to push back about a lot of the lies being told by the Democrats. And I finally thought, what if I do another radio show and give it away for free to stations, make it very easy, as easy as possible for them to cover and carry, and I'll try to monetize it along the way. And so on Monday, I'm going to launch a second radio show. The flagship station will be WGAU in Athens, Georgia, and we will be distributing the show over the Georgia News Network. Any station in the state that wants to carry it can, unless you're in Atlanta, then it's got to be WSB. But I'll be here on WSB still, and we'll be statewide 9 to noon, and in Atlanta 4 to 6 every day. I'm excited.
It's great to be here with all of you and also with an awful lot of friends. There's one friend in particular I wanted to mention at the beginning. We've known each other for many years in the course of this conservative movement. His voice and his values are respected by people all across this country. And I can tell you, our administration is grateful for his friendship, for his support, and for his leadership in the conservative movement. Would you join me in thanking the founder of the Resurgent and one of the most prominent conservatives in America, Eric Erickson?
Well, that was I didn't even get to hear his speech. That's from the Resurgent Gathering over the weekend. I was in the back and got ushered back to the back room. My family was there. The vice president wanted to meet him, so I never even got to hear his speech. I didn't get to hear him say those nice things. So it was very flattering indeed. He's been a longtime friend. We've known each other for a decade, more than a decade. And it was great to see him this weekend. He spent some time with my wife and kids. I got a challenge coin from the vice president. My wife, however, lucked out. He knew she was coming. He insisted I bring my wife and family. Very, very funny story about the vice president in insisting my family come, getting a scriptural lecture from the vice president on honoring my parents by making sure they could see the vice president. But so he gave my wife a Secret Service motorcade challenge coin, which you've got to be law enforcement to get. My understanding from one of the Secret Service agents, you got to be law enforcement to get it, or the president has to authorize you to get it. And so my wife got the Secret Service challenge coin for the motorcade, which was very cool for her riding a motorcycle. Now, I want to start with this on gun control. Duke from Peachtree City, you're going to be up first tonight. Welcome.
Hey, Eric.
Hi there.
I am concerned about the proliferation of gun violence recently.
Mm-hmm.
I am a retired surgeon and therefore have seen my share of gun violence, which is not pretty. Mm-hmm. I'm aware of the Second Amendment, but I believe we have a law on the books that outlaws machine guns.
Correct.
Why not the same in a selective manner in outlawing assault weapons? Your thoughts?
Yeah, the question becomes, what is an assault weapon? And it's difficult because if you'll recall, the Democrats in the 1990s passed an assault weapons ban, and it didn't get rid of what you would consider an assault weapon. I mean, take an AR, for example, an AR-15. I've had a bunch of hunters tell me, you're not, in your typical AR, you're not going to hunt with something like that. You're going to want something more powerful than that. It looks spooky. It looks like something the military would use, but actually by caliber, it's really not. And so when people think of assault weapons that need to be banned, they think of the AR-15. They think the AR stands for assault rifle. It actually stands for Armalite, the company. And it's actually, firepower-wise, not as strong as a lot of stuff that the people who want to ban guns don't even talk about. So what are we talking about is part of the problem here. The president got rid of bump stocks, which you could put on the back of one of these rifles and make the firing more faster. By the way, it would bounce off your arm. You could pull the trigger faster. But, these things, they don't have machine gun triggers. You actually have to pull per shot. So the real problem here is, are we talking about all long barrel guns? Well, does that include the shotgun? Does that include the rifle? What sort of rifles does it include? When actually, overwhelmingly, gun violence in this country is due to handguns. Well, no one actually wants to publicly say they want to ban handguns, so you're not actually solving the problem where majority of shootings actually come from handguns. That's what's so difficult here. And then there is the Second Amendment. We can't forget the Second Amendment. A lot of people want to forget the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is an individual right in our Constitution. No other Constitution in the world has the Second Amendment. And so, frankly, you want my proposed solution for gun violence in this country? You're not going to like it if you're on the left. If you're on the right, you may not like it. We need more guns, not less. Everyone should have a gun in this country. Everybody should carry in this country. I mean, the left solution is we should be like other countries that don't have guns. Well, we have a Second Amendment. Unless you're going to repeal that amendment from the Constitution, it's a non-starter. So get everybody armed. So when shooters go into areas, they know the odds are they're going to be shot very quickly and put out of their misery. I think you got to think about it differently than other countries because no other country has the Second Amendment. Mike in Atlanta, you're going to be next. Welcome.
Yes, sir. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. I was just going to say I like where you're going. My whole idea is real simple about gun control is give gun owners more responsibility. We have carry permits that are state regulated. Why not do a national carry permit that allows any person that has it to go anywhere they want with a gun? Because I believe, I'm not for sure, I believe the Walmart in Texas was a no carry zone. And in Texas, they have a law that if there's a no weapon sign on the door, that it carries the weight of the law, which means you can't carry in there. They can arrest you, take your weapon, and all that stuff. But if we had, say, a well-regulated militia, you could turn it into something like that. Basically, train people active shooters, in active shooter situations. So you get people that want to get their carry permit, but then they want to upgrade it to a national carry permit where they do it every year instead of every 5 years.
Right.
Simply pay, a couple of bucks basically to have the guy train you, do active shooter drills, marksmanship, everything. And even if they want to initiate it, maybe a little in-depth background check, check your social media account if they want, some garbage, whatever. They're going to
when you get, thanks very much for that, Mike. When you get into checking people's social media, you're getting into freedom of speech. So you're combining the first and the second. That becomes deeply problematic. But I am actually in favor of expanded reciprocity laws where I should be able to, I got a concealed carry permit, be able to go anywhere in the country with my gun. See, and again, I realize there are people on the left. I love you. I respect you. We disagree on this issue. I know it's an impassioned, emotional thing today, given what's happened. And a lot of my friends who are on the left get mad at me when I say this, particularly around these times, because it tends to come up. But our country has a Second Amendment, and it is an individual right to keep and bear arms. The other nations that you guys look at, like Australia, which did a big mandatory gun buyback program, or New Zealand, which is forcing people to turn over guns. By the way, in New Zealand, they're finding out it's impossible to implement. They're giving up shortly after it got all sorts of fawning media attention here in this country. They're giving it up because they can't get people to turn their guns in, and they don't have a gun registry. This country is different from those countries because we have a Second Amendment. So we need to stop looking at these other countries saying, let's do what they did, because we can't constitutionally do what they did unless you're going to amend the Constitution. And you got to have 2/3 of both houses of Congress and 3/4 of the states to get that done. And that's not going to happen. So think differently about these things. It's always striking to me that the political left praises people who think differently. You think differently from them on gun violence, and you're a monster. No, we're just trying to actually come up with a way to solve the problem within the bounds of our Constitution. Just want to do a quick timeout for thanking Quip for being a longtime sponsor of this program. A lot of you got kids like me headed back to school, and well, maybe they're honest to goodness, I'm not sure how often our kid bathed during the summer. Our oldest now is just about every day, but the 10-year-old, well, time to get them back into a good routine, and Quip is a great way to do it. If they're having difficulties getting their teeth brushed on a regular basis, get them a Quip. They've got a kid-sized version now, but even the adult version, it's fantastic. Longtime user, love it. My wife uses it. My daughter uses it. I guess I need to get the 10-year-old to start using it. It works. It's one of the first electric toothbrushes accepted by the American Dental Association. They're backed by over 25,000 dental professionals. They've got thousands of 5-star reviews, verified 5-star reviews, no less. It's just a great toothbrush. It works. It's so well designed. It's only $25 if you go to getquip.com/Eric right now. You get your first refill pack for free. So you get your first refill pack free at getquip.com/Eric. And what is that refill pack? Well, every 3 months, you get a new brush head. So your Quip stays up to date and fresh. Go to getquip.com/Eric right now and get this great deal. Hello there. It is Eric Erickson, Atlanta's Evening News on WSB. All right. I want to go to Robert. You're going to be next. Robert, welcome.
Eric, how are you this afternoon?
Good. How are you?
I'm real good. Yeah, I just want to give you a look and feel from from the audience and what it felt like at the gathering.
Sure.
I did a lot of asking around and asked, who were you impressed with? And to the person, it was Tim Scott. It might have been Tim Scott and the governor, or Tim Scott and Perdue or Cotton. But to the person, it was Tim Scott, and almost everyone said the same thing I did. He's the real deal.
Honestly, I knew we were going to have to deal with the unfortunate headlines of today, and I wouldn't have time to play a lot of what people said from stage. But tomorrow I want to try to track down some of him and Bill Lee and play some of what they said, because I got to tell you, Tim Scott is one of the most impressive politicians in America, and he avoids the spotlight by and large, but he's a fantastic guy. I just think the world of him. He's a wonderful, wonderful human being. and was delighted that he could come this year. Last year we tried to get him, and he couldn't get out to Austin. It was too far. We got a lot of people who said they very much appreciated us doing it in Atlanta because, if nothing else, Delta can get you in and out, even with the storms usually. And it was great. So I will try to get some of that audio this week. Robin in Canton, you're next. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. What I wanted to ask was, I keep hearing this red flag being thrown around as a solution. Who is going to decide who poses a threat? Is it going to be a political enemy? Is it going to be somebody who owns more than 5 guns? How are they going to determine who is a threat?
So it depends on the version of the law. Marco Rubio has one, and a number of friends of mine say it actually would do more harm than good. It would implicate the First Amendment. Some of the red flag laws out there it's got to be law enforcement, and there are certain criteria by which they can file, or it's got to be family members who are disturbed. Gun rights, restraining orders are kind of implicated there. It really depends on how the law is crafted, but you want it as few people as possible able to apply the red flag law. I'm going to just bear with me if you're on the phones, and I apologize, but I got an email during commercial break, and I wasn't even going to talk about this subject, but it's from a lady, Karen in Alpharetta, and it was something I was going to talk about, and I struck out of the lineup of things I wanted to talk about, and she emailed me, and I think I want to address this because I'm sure if she's asking, normally, like with letters to the editor, you see a letter to the editor in the paper, there are probably 100 more people thinking the same thing, and they try to be representative when they formulate letters to the editor in the newspaper, and I guess I should do that here. And she writes, I don't mean this with hostility. I'm just genuinely interested. I hear you talk about your faith. But if God is real, why do things like these shootings happen? It just seems if God is real, we wouldn't have tragedies like these. And, I get this from a lot of people. There are a lot of people, Brian Stetler on CNN mocking Mitch McConnell for offering thoughts and prayers. I mean, why would anyone want to go on CNN? That's a different topic. But this, essentially it boils down to the standard question of, if God is real and God is good, why do bad things happen? He either can't be real or he can't be good. And there are a lot of people who buy that argument, and I think it's a nonsensical argument. Let me explain my view for those of you who have this. We are all sinners. The path through this life is trying to get right with God. The sin in Eden that caused mankind to be pushed out of Eden is a sin that disrupts our right relationship with God, and it festers. If you go into Genesis, one of the things I've always been fascinated about in the account of Noah and the flood, and just if you're listening, I am an Orthodox Christian, and I believe there really was a global flood. There was a guy and his family and animals in a boat. I really do believe this. If you can't take me seriously, I'm sorry. Me and 2 billion other people on the planet believe this story to be true. You're in the minority, not us. But if you read Genesis 1 as God's creating the heavens and the earth, he separates the water above and below. He puts the water in the ground. He makes the day and the night and all. And when you read the account in Noah, what you see is an exact reversal. In the precise order it happened in Genesis 1, and in Genesis 6, in the Noahic account, the water bursts forth from below, and then it rises on the earth, and the water comes down from the heaven, and then the whole world is wiped away. Eden itself is drowned. It's an effect of sin on the planet. Sin affects everything. Every man, woman, child, every animal, every plant, every bacteria, sin pollutes. And after Noah is on the boat and the water goes away, there's still sin. It's still in the ground, but God promises he won't wipe out the world like that again. But sin through Noah finds its way creeping back into the world. The birth rates of mankind decline in the Bible over time because of sin. Sin is bad. Sin is polluting. And God himself does not escape from it. It doesn't say God is a sinner, but he can't escape from the impact of sin. Sin is so overwhelming, something has to happen. And this is why God is great, God is good, God is real, but there's sin in the world. And it's a sin even he could not escape from. So, and I tell people this all the time who have trouble with forgiveness. It gets into the whole issue with sin as well. Sin so overwhelms the world and pollutes our souls that God himself had to come in the form of a man and be nailed to a cross and die. Martin Luther said it was the greatest sinner of all time on that cross. So much sin, even the sky went dark. God himself turned his back. The sins of all the world, past, present, future at that time, piled on one man so that we can have a restored relationship with God. We don't have a way out of this, but God didn't have a way out of it except death either. I tell people all the time, if you've got somebody in your life who you can't forgive, what you're saying is that what happened to you is more unforgivable than what happened to Christ on the cross, who said, Father, forgive them, before he died. Is the slight from your coworker, from your family, from your friend, from your former friend, is it worse than the torturing of Christ and nailing him to a cross? He could forgive that, but you can't forgive someone saying something unkind to you? And it's the same with this. Evil is an absence of God. I'm in the Augustine camp on this. Evil is the absence of God. Where there is not God, there is evil. Definitionally, that is evil. It's not some malevolent creature, although there are malevolent creatures, things seen and unseen, that we sometimes can't grasp, but they live in the absence of God. And sin is the absence of God. The more you put God in your life, the less you sin. And that's what we're dealing with here. It is a spiritual problem. And as progressives in the country move away from the idea of sin and redemption and forgiveness and an actual God and embrace a secular atheist view, they leave out sin, but in the process they leave out the concept of grace as well. And frankly, there are a lot of people on the right who have forgotten about grace, who treat everyone who disagrees with them as nasty as progressive secularists who don't believe in grace do. And we as a society have got to do better. Listen, I don't care whether you share my worldview or not. But bad things happen. And you can look at bad things and say, well, there can't be a God because this bad thing wouldn't happen. But you know what? I take real comfort in a God who is willing to die on a cross, who's willing to take the world's sins upon himself. I take real comfort in knowing that I can't escape bad things, but if bad things come to me and take me away, they carry me off to my Creator. And I'm okay with that. And I understand the sense of those who have abandoned the idea that there's an eternity for you're dead and the worms eat your body and everybody eventually forgets you. And it enrages those people and they feel like they have to fight in the here and now because there's nothing after now. I believe there is something after now. And unfortunately, I think there are too many people on the right who fight in ways that suggest they don't really believe there's something later, that they won't be held accountable for their actions either, and there's nothing better later, so they got to make it as good as they can here by owning the left, just as the left wants to own the right. We are living in a society filled with moral decay. We are living in a society that has decided that it can abandon trying to find a creator in heaven who can help us and deciding we've got to find politicians who can save us. But politicians are sinners too. Frankly, I'm a conservative because I'm a Christian. I want as few sinners in charge of me as possible. But there is a God. He is real. But bad things happen because there's sin in the world. And he didn't escape them either. He was willing to die on a cross because of those bad things. We get no escape from this world. We get no respite from it. But we can find peace if we're willing to look for it. And frankly, I think a lot of churches need to step up and be more engaged in their communities. And not just focused on the people who are inside the church doors, but those on the outside in their immediate area. Instead of sending the kids in the church off to Puerto Rico or the beaches of Mexico to do mission work, well, you got a mission field in your backyard that is clearly suffering, that clearly needs Jesus, that clearly needs you involved. These lonely young men who are alienated from society and everyone's ignoring them. It's not just the government that needs to step up. It's the church as well that needs to. Well, my apologies to those of you I couldn't get to on the phones today. We've only got 30 seconds. We will see you guys tomorrow here on 95.5 WSB. Maybe they'll change the name again.